Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining me. I'm so excited to be with you today. I would love it. I would love this to be interactive. So we do have a semi-large group here. I would love if everybody in the chat box could quickly introduce yourselves, just say your name, where you're from, and kind of why you joined today's session. And I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here for you. Okay. So I am here today to talk a little bit about women's leadership and kind of our role within it and how we view ourselves and how that can kind of sometimes limit us in our own ability as leaders. And I found this across the spectrum. Just to tell you briefly who I am. So I am from the executive director of Mzingo U, and we are an organization that aims to change, kind of train the next generation of responsible leaders. And we do that by partnering with universities and creating really powerful experiential learning experiences, typically internationally and locally, where students consult for nonprofits and social enterprises in Peru, Brazil, South Africa, Spain, the US, Canada, Netherlands, and also go through a responsible leadership curriculum. So I've been very fortunate and blessed to work with many amazing women through that program. We tend to skew largely women, so we tend to have about 60% women, and also work with a largely younger female staff. So a lot of these issues around women's leadership have been kind of forefront of my mind for many years. Just want to do a quick check-in question. Unfortunately, we don't have tons of time. It's only a half an hour. So what I would like for you to do is take a minute to jot down in your notes, when did you doubt that you could do something, but it turned out really well, actually? You said, oh, I can't really do this, but actually in the end, it really surprised you and turned out well. So I'm going to give you a minute, and then if people feel comfortable, you're welcome to share it on the chat. I'm going to see if maybe one or two people want to share their experience as well. Okay, great. What I want to see, I'll start first. So, you know, one thing I was always very passionate about, I was always a big believer in Obama, Barack Obama, and one of my cousins said that you should apply to work for the Obama administration before it ends, that this is an amazing opportunity. You know, they have 4,000 politicals across the US government. And I was so terrified. I just didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I was capable. And for a year, I just didn't even apply because I couldn't. I didn't think I had the strength or the abilities. Finally, I did apply for that last year, and I was able to get in and be a political working for Obama in the US Department of Agriculture, working on community economic development. But those doubts kept me from a year of work that I think I really would have loved. So is there any kind of one or two people that might want to share? Or I don't think I can see the chat box. Could you let me know, Luciana, if anybody?
No. Mm-hmm. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Do you want us talking or writing?
You can. I'm just going to have one or two people talking.
Yeah. For me, it was going to graduate school. Landing in my chair's office, who I admired and had never thought in my life I'd ever meet him, and getting in, you know, really becoming one of the first of a really important program, and it was hard and it was great.
That's wonderful. And what are you doing now, Lynn?
Well, I mean, I'm a practicing illustrator and fine artist, and I teach illustration. So I'm basically, I followed in his footsteps, which is a little scary.
Wonderful. Does anybody else want to share? One more person, maybe? And then okay, no problem, no problem. We're going to break out into groups, and we'll share in groups, and I think it's easier to talk there. So I want to talk to you briefly about me. So first, why am I doing this work? So I actually come from a very large Cuban-American family. I'm the baby of 10 kids. This is my lovely daughter, Sophia. I have another daughter, Aviva. But I had a unique situation where I was actually raised by my father, and I came after 4 boys. So I was raised in a largely male household and had kind of a different approach to my upbringing, I think, than a lot of women. And so I've always constantly compared kind of how, you know, men experience the world and how those of us who identify as women experience the world as well. And I've been very fortunate in my life. You know, I've tended to take on leadership roles and work with some amazing women, and I've had some amazing friends, really awesome friends. I played rugby at the UNC Chapel Hill, where I was surrounded by these phenomenal women, and this is something we do at almost every wedding or get together. We do a pyramid. And there's some phenomenal women here. Most of my friends, thankfully, have moved on to leadership positions in their fields, many of whom are in social justice, whether that be, you know, a lawyer working for against sexual harassment issues in universities. We have quite a few social workers working with the foster care system, many in the public health sector fighting COVID right now. And some of you might recognize the woman on the top, Jen Shelton. She's actually a pretty famous runner in the US. She holds the US record for ultra marathons, so running 100 miles. So some pretty amazing women. I'm very fortunate and lucky to have them. But what I found is, even amongst these amazing women, when I took the time to ask them, I said, you know, I'm developing this women's leadership workshop series. Can we just talk about the challenges you have as women leaders? And within 10 minutes, these are the responses that we gathered and that you can see in this word cloud. I'm overly self-critical. I have like crippling self-doubt. I have very low confidence. I'm always apologizing. I'm feeling undervalued. I never know how to negotiate for a higher raise. I'm a perfectionist, and it keeps me from, you know, it takes very long times to get things done. I'm constantly worrying about my abilities. And, you know, it just got me thinking that I've seen this pattern over and over again in myself and in so many other women that I've had the chance to meet and work with. And that it was something that even amongst really powerful female leaders continues to be an issue, right? So I had the chance when I was with Obama in a women's leadership program there to meet this phenomenal woman. Her name is Blanche Lincoln. For those of you who don't know her, she is a U.S. female, well, was a U.S. female senator. She served for 12 years out of Arkansas as a Democrat. And she was actually the youngest senator to be elected at 38. Now, she talked very openly about her experience, and she told us that she actually got married and had children while she was in office, and she had twins. And she talked about how it was very hard because she received so much criticism for continuing to be a senator while being pregnant and then while having twins. And that everybody was saying, you're going to be a terrible mother. You can't do both. You can't have a career and you can't be a mom. And she said, you know, most of that criticism, it came from other women, right? And when I finally got the chance to ask her a question, and I said, you know, Senator Lincoln, you know, given all of that criticism that you were facing, you know, how did you kind of overcome that self-doubt to be able to do this incredible position and have this incredible role? And she looked at me and she goes, you know what? I never did. I never did. She said, I always struggled with self-doubt and self-criticism my whole career. She said, and my male colleagues would always tell me, you have to get over this. You can't listen to it. She said, but I would go home most nights crying, feeling that I wasn't competent, that I shouldn't be here. And I just thought, wow, like if this incredibly powerful female leader who I aspire to be like often also struggles with this confidence issues, then this is something kind of across the board. And, you know, obviously we all know the facts. I'm sure you've heard them a million times. We don't have tons of time. I don't want to spend on it, but we know that women make less in the workspace. You know, sometimes 81 cents to the dollar. That's much lower for Hispanic and Black women, at 54 cents to the dollar for Hispanic women in the U.S. As you know, we work we hold 52% of professional level jobs, but we are only 14.6% of executives, 4.6% CEOs in Fortune 500, you know. And then obviously, as I mentioned here, we've only actually had 57 female senators in history, and we currently have 26 out of 100 in the US. And so, and then of course, going back, in terms of the investment space and women entrepreneurs, right? This is a challenge that most of you probably know women entrepreneurs face, that we tend to receive, you know, very small amount of impact investment funds. And then we only about 1%, 1.3% of these startups have female leadership, right? So we're largely underrepresented in many fields. And I'm sure you all know these facts, but you know, I was really breaking it down, and there's, you know, several reasons that this happens, right? You know, obviously there's external factors that sometimes we feel we can't control. The way that men might perceive us, the way that society has kind of made us feel, has perceived women. In every country, it's very different, right? Obviously, in some countries, women have more rights than in others. But what I've always been most fascinated by is the internal component of this. You know, what can we control? Because, you know, to some extent, we can keep fighting for these external and societal influences, but it's internally the things that we can really try to control and work on.
Mm.
And what I found, across the board with other women, with myself, with my sisters, with my mom, with every female I've known, many of my mentors, is that we tend to be so hard on ourselves, right? And we tend to always be criticizing ourselves, and I'm not good enough, and I didn't do good in this presentation, and I'm not smart enough to apply for this job. I'm not a good enough entrepreneur to take this off the ground. And then also what I think is really sad as well is that we're so hard on each other, right? Like this whole idea, we've seen Mean Girls, many of us have experienced it, this idea that we're not just saying mean things about ourselves, but sometimes subconsciously, sometimes out loud saying mean things about other women and bringing other women down as well. And, I've done a lot of research on this, and I've become very, very fascinated by this topic. And many researchers are calling it the confidence gap, right? And there's a whole book on it that I highly recommend. It's been very powerful. And their idea here is that if you look at this image, that men tend towards overconfidence, especially in the workplace. They tend to say, I'm very great at this, or I can get that job. They, like, as we've heard, if they see a job description, even if they only get 60% of it, they apply. Whereas women, if they see a job description, we need to meet 100% of those goals before we apply, right? And women tend to skew towards underconfidence. We tend to be very hard on ourselves, right? And this is really important and powerful because the research has shown that confidence is often more important than competence. So it's not always the smartest person that gets to that leadership role as your company. It's not always the smartest person, as we've seen, who get to the highest political office, right? It's often the people who are most confident that take on those leadership positions. So it's really important that we focus on this, our own confidence levels. So I want to take some time here. We're going to take some time to share. We do have a poll, but I want you to ask yourselves here, do I often doubt myself at work, at home? Do I usually overthink problems? Do I worry constantly about what people think about me? Do I always try to be perfect at work, at home, in life? Do I worry about my body image and looks? And Luciana's going to share a poll for you guys so we can quickly see the results. But I'd like you to kind of jot down and reflect on these questions and share that poll with us as well.
Can you see the poll?
I can, yes. So if everybody wants to take the time to fill it in. It's anonymous, of course.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so far, do I often doubt myself at work and at home? 75% of us said yes. Okay.
Do you want me to that I
you
share
can
the
share with the
results?
group? That would be great, yes.
Yeah.
Do I usually overthink problems? 88%. Do I worry constantly about what people think about me? 75%. Do I always try to be perfect at home, at life, at work? 94%. Do I worry about my body and image and looks? 88%. Okay. Kudos to those two who said no. But as we see here, these are common issues that we all face. So what I'd love for you to do, we're going to break you out into groups. And I would like for you to obviously introduce yourself, but reflect on some of these questions. Go back to that first question. When did you doubt yourself and actually things turned out well? And maybe on that flip side, if we had more time, we'd get to when did you doubt yourself and it held you back from something. So we're going to split you up into groups of about 4 and give you some time to talk through your reflections. Okay, great. Thank you. I hope you all had some time to have some powerful discussions and connect with people. We only have a few more minutes left, so I'm going to go back to screen sharing. But is there anybody who would like to share kind of something with us here about your reflections on this or something powerful that might have come out of your individual group discussions? Okay, and you can share in the chat too if you're more comfortable. Okay, well, we'll keep going. So, why does this matter? And, I've thought a lot about this and I've experienced it, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this too, but often when we don't feel very good about ourselves, we tend to not be very nice to other people, or we tend to think negative thoughts about other people, or, a woman might walk in and you know, she's to a bar and she's beautiful and you might feel really bad about yourself. Oh my gosh, you know, I'm not good enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not this enough. And then you might try to pick out her flaws, like, oh, but you know, she's not perfect either, this, that. And kind of, I've seen this over and over again. And what I've seen is, I found this quote from an amazing organization in New York, Kings Against Violence, that hurt people, right? Say it one more time. Hurt people, hurt other people, right? And this is in so many contexts, but I really, when I said this, I was like, this is very similar to what we experience as women. When we're hurting, when we're not feeling good about ourselves, that's when either subconsciously or consciously, we're finding flaws in other people and often other women and harping on those flaws, right? And so that kind of, at times, can generate this feeling of we're hard on ourselves, but we're also really hard on others and other women. And I think this is particularly important when we're talking about women entrepreneurship and women leadership, right? Because there are so many cards already stacked against us, right? Like we know there's so many societal influences. You know, in our group, someone mentioned they felt confident, but when they went into a space, other people were doubting their abilities. And then that made them doubt their abilities, right? So there's so many things at play. And this is when more than ever, we need to support one another. But oftentimes when we're not feeling good, then we're actually often subconsciously bringing each other down, right? And we've seen this, you know, people talk about whatever your political affiliations, you know, obviously Hillary Clinton did not win the election. Yes, a lot of men didn't vote for her, but a lot of women did not vote for her either, right? And that might be political, what you believe, but it's also, there's still the sentiment, and I've heard it from many of my friends, the United States is not ready for a woman president. You know, a woman can't do the things that men can. Like, we do it to ourselves sometimes. So, well, this was, you got to hopefully reflect on your team as well, your groups as well. But I think it's also really important to sit down, and if not right now, reflect after the session, like, when have my doubts often held me back? When did I think, you know, I can't do this and I'm not going to go for it? And for me, you know, that's trying to work for the United Nations. I always wanted to work for the United Nations, but I've always felt like, oh, I'm not smart enough. I'm not capable enough. And I've never applied. And I think for some people, maybe there are other things. And you feel free to share it in the chat box if you can. Maybe a time when you had a self-doubt and it actually held you back because you were so concerned about it. And, you know, the next question is, and we don't have tons of time, is what can we do about it, right? And, you know, I've spent a lot of time studying this, working with women on these issues, working with lots of phenomenal women, young, old, in this space, and really found that there's kind of like the ABCs of confidence is what I call it. So first is acknowledgement, right? We need to really recognize when we're being hard on ourselves. We need to create more awareness. You know, in the book, they call it NATs, negative automatic thoughts. So we need to start recognizing those negative automatic thoughts. You know, like I had one this morning, like, oh, I'm not gonna look good at the right angle on this camera. Okay, does that really matter? You know, or last night I was like, oh, what if the session doesn't go well? And I was like, you know, it's not about how I perform. I'm really trying to get a message out there to help all of you to start recognizing these negative thoughts and kind of changing the message, right? So how can we kind of switch those beliefs, right? Instead of saying, oh, I'm not smart enough, there's no way I can apply for that job. You say, yeah, I can get that job. Like, I am actually capable of that. And just to practice that quickly, I'd love for you guys to think of something you've told yourself you can't do, and then change that around in your head, right? And kind of sit with that thought, right? That you can do it. And how does that feel, right? Does it feel better to think like, I can't do this, I can't do that, da, 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 da? Or does it feel more empowering to think like, yes, I can do this? Like, I don't need to worry about if my presentation is perfect. If it gets the message across, it's worth it, right? So sit with then how it feels. And then the big part for me is this idea of compassion, right? For ourselves, firstly, and for others. And, you know, this idea, if your friend comes to you and she says, you know, oh, I did so terrible at my job today. I had to present to the whole team and I just messed it up. And everybody thought I did an awful job and I spoke too fast and nobody listened and I got confused. You know, how are you going to respond to your friend? Are you going to say, oh yeah, you were terrible and everybody thought your presentation was awful? No, you're going to say, oh no, you did a wonderful job. We really liked it. I really enjoyed it. You should definitely present more. And that's that same attitude we need to take with ourselves, right? We need to say, wow, I'm so proud of myself that I had the courage to do that presentation in front of my all male team, or in front of, older staff, or whoever it is. And, I might have not been perfect, but next time, I'm going to be more prepared, right? So showing yourself that same self-compassion. And these are things, if we had more time, we would work on it. And that's why I encourage you, if you were interested, please email me, and I would like to set up another 1 or 2 workshops to get through the content we couldn't today. But, what are some quick actions we can take with this is, for after, we don't have time now, but maybe, write down 3 self-doubts that you experience, right? Constantly experience on a piece of paper after this session or sometime today. And then rip them up and throw them away. Because the psychology and the research has shown that when we carry those doubts with us, literally, people who carry those doubts in their pockets feel them more throughout the day. And people who rip them up and throw them away do feel relief from some of that pressure. And then later, write down how you will work to improve on those, and changing that narrative around those doubts, self-doubts, over the next week. Perhaps it's not, I'm not good at giving presentations, to I can improve giving presentations and be more confident in my abilities and believing in myself. Or maybe it's, I'm terrible at my job, to actually I'm learning a lot and my colleagues really respect me and they like listening to my opinion, right? And then write down 3 things you can do in the next month to support other women in your network, in your community, mothers, sisters, friends, who also suffer with self-doubt. And I think we know lots of them. One person on my team said that she spends 50% of her mental energy worrying about her looks and her weight, right? A very harrowing statistic said that internationally, only 2% of women think they are beautiful, right? Yeah, pretty sad, right? And also think here, like those questions we asked about self-doubt, like how do you think a man would respond to those questions? Right? Yeah. And I see some head nodding. And I know I asked my husband and my brothers, and it's all yes, yeah. No. I don't self-doubt myself. I'm great at my job. I do wonderful, right? And so we have to think about, like, how do we reposition our thoughts to be our own best friend, right? To be our own supporter in life. And so giving you a few actions here today, and then this idea of don't think, just act, right? The natural result, of low confidence, that the studies are finding is, it won't let me go back, sorry, is that when women hesitate and we aren't sure, we hold our own selves back, right? But when we act, even if we're forced to, we perform just as well as men. Okay, all of the studies show that. It's not that we're less capable, it's just that we don't believe in ourselves as much. And I just want to leave you with one more quote that I found that I really powerful, which is, she who knows others is wise. She who knows herself is enlightened, right? And this is by a famous Chinese philosopher who actually started Taoism. And obviously it said he, okay, but I changed it to she. But I think it's, that's a lot of the work we do at Mzingo U, and a lot of the work I'm trying to do here, is that the more you understand yourself and the doubts you're putting on yourself and the fears that you have, and maybe the negative automatic thoughts that you're thinking that are holding you back in your own career, then the more that you understand the reality around you and what you can do to change it. So hopefully, I hope you got something out of this short session. I know we're a little bit over, but if anybody wants to share, this is my email, please email me. I would love to coordinate another session or 2 if you'd like to continue. And I included some more resources here that I think are wonderful, some TED Talks, some books, some articles about the same topic. But very quickly, if anybody could kind of chime in, if you want to put your video on and say hello, I'd love to hear some thoughts from you about how today's session made you feel or think about.
Okay, I have, I guess, like 2 things. I think it's always good, not good, but like helpful to understand that other women experience the same problems that you do, because it feels like everything I do, it's like, I don't know if you're, because there's a lot of people telling you about who that they think you are and what they think you're capable of. And it's something that I really struggle with, and like people assume that if you try and go for something that you were confident in the whole time, and that's not true at all. So yeah, that's helpful. And also, could you put your email in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. I just emailed Christina@mzingo.com.
Okay.
And that's Christina without an H, so everybody knows. Any other comments? Thank you for sharing.
I just wanted to chime in if possible.
Yeah, go
I
for
was
it.
just telling my group, it's so funny because this morning I was having a confidence meltdown. I mean, just to be real transparent, I have 2 small kids who you probably hear in the background. And literally had just thought to myself, okay, you've been home for a month. What have you gotten done? And was just having this whole story behind it. So thank you for this session today. It's definitely been a little therapeutic. I appreciate it.
You are doing a great job, Mom. Doing a great job. I say it again, I have 3 little kids. Being stuck in your home with your 3 little kids and trying to work and trying to attend a conference is hard. It is very, very hard. You're doing a great job, and be nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Be nice to yourself. Anyone else want to share some thoughts about how this made you feel, or maybe what you've seen in other men in your lives, if it's different? All right. Nobody's confident enough to speak up, or you don't have thoughts? Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Lynn, I think you're trying to talk, but you're on mute. If someone can unmute.
Yeah, I've just found, and I've had to do it consciously. I mean, when I noticed that when I was, working in an office, that women were very competitive, and it sort of freaked me out, and which is why I always liked working by myself.
Mm-hmm.
But I made a conscious decision at one point to, really start to be complimentary to women, to really embrace the women around me. And I found it's really worked. It's made a big difference because I find that by being non-competitive and just, honest and that kind of thing, it just sort of, it levels the playing field. All of a sudden, you're a team, and you're, rather than trying to who's prettier, who's smarter, who's taller, who's thinner, who's fatter, all that crap that we grow up with. And the thing I noticed as a professor is I teach in my classes, in one of the schools I teach in, there are no men, they're all women. So, I mean, I have to really sort of bring what everything you're talking about into my classroom, because I don't want to see women get out of school and have the kinds of experiences that I had,
Exactly.
So, bravo. Bravo. It's great. It's really great stuff, man. I mean, I'm really there. It's,
That's awesome.
And, I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Lynn. And my sister, because I'm the last of 10, my sister's 20 years older than me.
Okay.
And I was talking to her last night, and she said, but she calls me Bella, baby in the family. Bella, this is largely generational. Like my generation, we didn't grow up with the same, rights that you guys have. So of course we're not as confident, but you guys should be more confident.
I know.
And I was like, no, unfortunately, that's not how it works. I was like, there's still these confidence issues. They are lifelong, and they start young. They start so young. My niece was 5 years old, gorgeous little girl. 5 years old, she looked in the mirror and she said, I'm so ugly.
Is that horrible?
And I was like, what?
Oh.
What? And I said, no, you're not. You're beautiful. You're beautiful. And I was like, your dad tells you you're beautiful all the time. And she goes, well, he's my dad. He has to say that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, how can it possibly start this young? Like, how can we start with the self-doubts this young?
You start to ask yourself, where is this coming from? Is this an inbred? Is this a gender thing? Is it, and how can we start to dismantle it? And I think that's really the key, is to just, because that was my surprise. Because at one point, I had a class of 20 girls. And in my classroom, they were very tight. There was a real nice synchronicity. And later on, after the class was over with, when the course was over with, I was talking to one of the girls, and she started saying, talking about how she was uncomfortable with certain people. I'm going, really? Where was I? So that's what I'm thinking. This stuff is still going on. I was like, I wanted to tear my hair out.
Right, but while it's still going on, I think one thing, Christina, you did
Mhm.
say that it's a good point from your sister, though, too, that we have to remember is that I got a lot of my confidence because other people worked hard to get that for me. And that, a lot of what a lot of women went through before I did to kind of earn that. And I think that is something important to remember too, that I'm really fortunate that I didn't have to go through a lot of the same struggles that they did. Not to say that I don't have my own, but I think we also can't forget all of the women that came before us that
Oh.
had it so much harder
Sure.
than we did.
And still have it so hard in many places in the
Exactly.
world.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
And culturally, you know, you go to other
Absolutely.
countries and it's like, 100 years behind us in a lot of ways still.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And that's, I mean, it's an international issue, right? I mean, at Bazinga, we work with women from all over the world. And I was running a session in New York last year, and we had 7 powerful women from 7 different countries. We had Singapore, we had Germany, we had, Argentina, Canada, US, and literally within 5 minutes of that time getting together, within 5 minutes of pre-discussion, it was just like, oh, I feel so fat. Oh, I can't eat this. Oh gosh, it just made me feel so bloated. And I was just like, wow, like we have this time to be together to talk about social impact and women entrepreneurship. And we're already like being mean to ourselves, right? And so it's across the board, it's international. And like you said, Melissa, yes, these women have worked so hard before us to get us these rights and these privileges and these abilities to be in the workforce and to try to do it all. And we have to do something with that. We can't spend all of that time just doubting ourselves and our abilities and not going for that job, not going, like I know someone mentioned here, I would love to run for office, but I don't have the confidence, right? Like we have to go for it, because or else what do we fight for? If we're still holding ourselves back, what do we fight for, right?
And you made me think of something too. I think a lot of times, like let's say people my age will look at you and say, well, what's your problem? You have it so much easier than us. And I think that's really poor on our part, because I think that we're also not addressing and accepting the fact that a lot of these issues are they're still there, and they do need to be addressed on a totally universal level.
Yes. And I think it's really important, Lynn, to talk about it with women who are older than you.
Yeah. Oh,
because
sure.
sometimes we don't,
Sure.
we don't talk about it with each other.
Yeah.
But we do need the women who are older than us and have experienced life to tell us, like, you need, you need to feel better about yourself. Like
Sure.
you can do this. Like, don't doubt yourself. We need those women to encourage us. I had those same doubts and they held me back. Or I had that doubt. I didn't think I could go to grad school, but I did. And look where I am. I'm a professor now at a top design school in the country.
Yeah.
Like we need those women in our lives. And that's what I was finding is these powerful mentors I had in my life. I couldn't believe it. My cousin Bibi is my most powerful mentor. She worked in the White House for 4 years with Obama. She's incredible. But when you get to her, when I got to know her more and more personal level, same doubts. It's like, oh, I look so fat. Don't post that picture. I hate that picture of myself, please. I mean, that's image, but other things too. Like, I can't do this. I can't start my own business. And it's like, no, like she's, 15 years older than me. I'm like, you're my mentor. You have to have more confidence because I need to see that modeled in you to feel like I can do it.
Oh, I mean, this is a conversation. This is such a big conversation.
Yes,
I mean, I was lucky. I mean, my aunt was the first female to graduate from the architecture department at NYU.
Awesome.
But the messages I got, but then the messages change. I mean, she gave me messages that aren't appropriate to be giving to you people, and vice, and it'll trickle down. But it doesn't mean it gets harder or easier. I mean, it just is different. It's a different, the context is different. So,
great, ladies. Wow. Thank you so much for joining today. This was wonderful. I wish I could have got to know each and every one of you on a more personal level. So please feel free to email me. I'd love to coordinate another workshop. And then please take those self-doubts, rip them up, think about something for today, even like something even like, oh, I wanted to reach out to this contact, but I'm nervous. Do it. Reach out to them, right? Think of something even today that you can do differently, a way you can support another woman, a way that you can support yourself, and make the most out of this conference. And thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you sharing with me today your doubts and your thoughts. Awesome. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks a lot, Christina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice day, everyone. Bye.
Bye.